So it's still being set up for YouTube, done. Make sure I push mute on the YouTube channel. I've made that mistake before. So that's that. Let's go back to Zoom. Here we go. Let's go gallery view for you and I. Want to let everybody in from the waiting room.
All right.
Good to go. It's populating. I don't know how that's happening. Everybody's supposed to be on mute.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like we're good to go. Dang, that's gonna be. I'm gonna have to mute everybody. Okay, here we go. All right, good evening, everybody, and thank you all for joining us. This is the second. This is 2 of 2 of On the Level. These On the Level discussions are sponsored by the Lux E Tenebris research chapter of the Phylaxis Society. And we are very thankful to all of our officers, President Alex Smith, all of the officers, all the presidents, emeritus, all of the brothers, the honorable brothers, members. We are so thankful for the continued support, for the generosity of ideas, and for the scholarship, and for always allowing the brothers for a space to meet on the level. Tonight, I don't know if y'all caught that first one, but tonight this is I couldn't think of any other way to follow up the first one than to have my good brother, my highly esteemed elder, none other than Brother A. Tahuti Evans, hailing from the Grand Lodge, Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Washington, D.C. He's coming to us. Many of y'all already know this brother. He doesn't need an introduction. I'll tell you a little bit about when I first met my brother. He was owner of a bookstore up on Georgia Avenue in Washington, D.C. And while I was a student at Howard University, the bookstore was House of Kemet. And it was the spot to get any type of enlightenment that you were seeking. Brother Tahuti would sit there, he would hold court. I mean, sometimes, I knew some people was in there, they were pretending to browse the book, brother, just to get an earshot. They was in there eavesdropping, if you will. But the brother's phenomenal. I mean, he has knowledge like none other. You've all often heard me say that when I need some type of Masonic information, understanding and knowledge, I got about 3 basic people that I can always go to and depend on. I got my brother Tahuti right here. Of course, I got past master brother Roundtree and also brother James Morgan III. Those are my three go-tos, especially here in the Washington, D.C. area. So without any further ado, help me in welcoming our good brother, Brother A. Tahuti Evans. Brother Tahuti, what's up, man?
Well, good evening, Brother Jeff. Again, I am just honored that you invited me to participate with you in this particular Lux E Tenebris presentation. I'm thrilled and that you selected an idea that was thought of by Brother Roundtree as editor of the Phylaxis magazine when he interviewed you and I about some very important questions in reference to Freemasonry and the African influence. So getting a chance to go into a little detail on what we both presented, I think is a grand idea. And again, I'm honored and pleased to be with the brothers tonight. It looks like we have a large audience from all across the country. I want to thank the brothers for deciding to tune in to be a part of this discussion. And I hope that, but I know between you and I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Sir. It's okay. That was the automatic recording in progress, man. Apologize for that interruption.
Okay.
Yeah, she was just announcing that the recording was in progress, brother. My bad.
No problem.
But yeah, I couldn't think of a better topic, than, the Phylaxis, the magazine, like you said, that Brother Roundtree came up with the idea to interview the two of us about the African influence of Freemasonry. And it's a very, very important topic. It brings a lot of tension sometimes into the room. And, I can't wait for us to have this this conversation, and hopefully, the brothers that are listening in, either they will be sparked with some new information, they will, have some old information reiterated for them. But either way, I hope that everybody leaves this conversation with a better understanding about this whole concept of the African influence on Freemasonry. And I see that you teleported yourself to the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. I recognize the Egypt room, man. That is a beautiful room, brother. So let's start there. Let's start there. The Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. Why is that imagery so important, brother?
Well, the white Freemasonry knows the roots of the craft, and the fact that they would spend the amount of resources to decorate their Grand Lodge with the whole Egyptian motif is an answer in itself in terms of the root of the craft. But it's not, this is a beautiful example. The Grand Lodge of New York has a Egyptian room. Galveston, Texas has a beautiful Egyptian room. Brothers all over our white brothers all over the states have Egyptian rooms throughout Freemasonry. They know something that we don't reflect. They know something about the craft that we don't openly reflect. And the thing that I think, in looking forward to the growth of the craft, especially among the young Black college graduates of today, who are more conscious of who they are. They're not afraid to call themselves African or African American. When I was a young 18-year-old, you would almost get in a fight. Like if you call a brother anything other than a Negro or a colored man. So in my lifetime, I've seen the evolution of how we look at ourselves, and we're living in a day and time now where I think that brothers in the craft are open to wanting to know more about what did we or our ancestors contribute to the craft.
Right. And Brother Tahuti, let me jump in real quick, because I apologize. I meant to do this at the top of the discussion. I want to pay homage to our recently departed brother, none other than President Emeritus Robert Campbell, a giant amongst men. The brother did so much for Freemasonry as a whole, and especially for the Phylaxis Society.
Yes, he did.
One of my.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say one of my greatest concerns was that, when this pandemic hit, that before we all got a chance to come back together again, that we might end up losing one or two of our grand elders, man. And it hit pretty hard. Remember when we figured out that we weren't going to be meeting again in person, Brother Campbell and I, we got on the call. He said, "Oh man," I was so looking forward to to the libations, and breaking bread. Because last session, we were all sitting up in Brother DiMaggio's room, man, and holding court up there.
Yes,
it's nothing like our Phylaxis Society conventions and the way that it brings us together, man. That's like true fellowship. And so, I really, really, really miss Brother Campbell, even though I recently met him in the past few years, brother. But, when we all get together, man, it's like family, PHA family, you know what I mean? And
yes, I agree with you in terms of him being a giant amongst us. I first met him in, I think it was 2011. And Brother Roundtree took me to the convention in Tampa, Florida. And that's when I first met Bob. He was open to new people coming in. During the time he served as president, he and I had several conversations. I would say I blame him for elevating me to a level of, or introducing me to white Freemasonry in a way when he took me to Cedar Rapids Hour, the Scottish Rite conference out there. And I met a number of giants in white Freemasonry. I was well received. I did more traveling from connections I made at that particular event. So I have had just the highest regards for Bob. Like during my whole tenure in the the Phylaxis Society. So
Yeah.
I missed the brother, and I really missed the brother. And like you, I hope the other brothers that's in our age range, I'm very cautious. I've taken the shot. I wear a mask every time I can. Like when I'm out in the public, men our age can't, if we get the virus, we tend to have more difficulty surviving it.
Yeah.
So,
And we got to protect our national treasures, because you are one of our national treasures, and Prince Hall Freemasonry and Freemasonry generally, and then just in the African consciousness community, man. And so, I mean, you're one of our pillars, and anybody ever had any question about that, stop it. Because I see folks, they get to typing off at the thumb a lot of times, man, and they couldn't hold a match to you. And that's just what it is, and and I don't know, again, most people, y'all probably already know Brother Tahuti, but if you don't know, you finna find out. So let me share a quick story, Brother Tahuti, about the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. I was working on Symbolically Speaking, and I wanted to get some pictures, and I'd done some research about the, African themed or the Egyptian themed lodges here in the United States. And I figured that the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania was the closest. So my family and I, we packed up and we rode, we jumped up to Philly from DC. And of course, I got there about 20 minutes after the last tour had started. So we had missed the tour, and so I kind of casually let the guard know, that I'm a member of the craft. Is there anything you could do to get us into this Egyptian room or catch us up with the tour? He called on his walkie-talkie, man. He sent down another brother, and they took my family and I straight to the Egyptian room. He unlocked the door, turned on the lights, and said, take your time and just let us know when you finish. So here it is, myself, my wife, and my 2 children, all to ourselves in the Egyptian room. We took our time looking at all the panels. We took our time taking pictures, some of which ended up in Symbolically Speaking, man. But it was just such a powerful experience. And then they hear the story behind it, because, the brother, he told me that was the first room completed in the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. How massive that building is. They made sure that this was the first room completed. And not only that, they actually sent somebody over to Kemet or Egypt to, look and study so they could do a replica as close to possible. They wanted the person who was going to do this room to have actually visited a temple so that they'd know exactly what to do when they got back here to lay out this Egypt room. And so it's like what you were saying before, the amount of resources, that they are pouring into their Masonic lodges to replicate our ancestral temples is perplexing. And to me, as you said, it's an answer of itself. I mean, when you look down at the House of the Temple, for example, down right around from where you at, you look at that, and when you hear the story about the 2 statues, the matter of fact, what's on the cover of the magazine, when you see these 2 statues, and you hear the story about how they quarried the stone in New York, brought it down by train, and they laid tracks from Union Station to the House of the Temple just to bring these slabs. They carved them on site and pulled the tracks up after that.
Yes.
That's a massive amount of resources to commemorate or to pay tribute and honor to a culture. And for people to say that it has nothing to do with Freemasonry, to me, that's a moot point, man. It's like there's no argument based on that. So, so what's your stance, brother, on the relationship between ancient Egypt, ancient Kemetic spirituality and sciences, and the modern day craft of Freemasonry?
The foundation of modern day craft Freemasonry is the ancient Nile Valley culture. It all started there. The mechanism, what it went through to get to Europe, is in history books. It's somewhat in the legends in both the Cook manuscript and the what's called the Regis poem. What I call the first real intellectual white English Freemason, William Preston, and his works, Illustrations of Masonry. He goes into detail again about the foundation of the craft. For folks who don't know, ancient Egypt is where all of this began. Now, unfortunately, there have been some brothers, I think, that have kind of reached trying to come to the same conclusion in terms of the work they put out. And again, I'm in no way demeaning the author, but I know there was a book that I read, that says Freemasonry. He found PHREE masonry in Egypt. I've gone through several Medu-Neter dictionaries or hieroglyphic dictionaries. I've searched far and wide, reading translations of the ancient papyri, several of them, and I could find no such term in the Nile Valley itself. The act of building in stone, as the stonemasons guilds were developed in the Roman Empire and progressed to the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne created that about 800 and so in this Common Era. And thus, with the creation of the Holy Roman Empire, the Europeans, who were at that time in the midst of what they have determined as their Dark Ages, as such, began to build cathedrals, castles, and churches. So there was a great need for stonemasons, the stonemasons' craft, to work on all of these buildings. So the stonemason guilds teaching the entered apprentices, or the apprentice that were assigned to the journeyman and the masters who were directing the work, is the foundation as in terms of what operative masons were doing. And as the Europeans tell their own story, the church, the Holy Roman Catholic Church, had considered the esoteric teachings or the hermetic teachings of stonemasonry. It was okay to teach that in order for them to build the temples and the cathedrals, to orientate the temples toward the right direction, so that the sun rising in the east would bring the right sunlight into the buildings and that kind of thing. But in terms of teaching those sciences to the general population of Europe, it was forbidden. And thereby, what I call civilians, or the men who we now know as speculative men, began to find a way to attend the stonemason guild classes. And from attending those stonemason guild classes, that's where the civilians or the speculative masonry actually kind of got its start. Now, that's one path. The other path, as you pointed out, I think there definitely needs to be more investigation, is from Scotland. And the reason that the Scottish path needs to be explored in more detail, according to their own legends, all right, their own story. Scotland is named after an Egyptian princess named Skoda, all right? And in their story, Irishmen or some Europeans came to the Nile Valley. At the time, they were engaged in a war with someone. And having aided the pharaoh in defeating his enemy, the reward given was the hand of his daughter, or one of his daughters to this particular guy. And forgive me for not even trying to pronounce his name. But at any rate, the wedding party included an entourage of Egyptians, was sent with the pharaoh's daughter, the king's daughter, back to the homeland of the guy she married. And when they arrived there was war going on, and they engaged in it. And she, in leading her forces, was killed in the battle. And she is buried today at a place called Skoda Glen. That is an actual place in Scotland. And but after she was killed, the entourage didn't go back home. They stayed and settled in that part of Ireland. And by settling in that part of Ireland, it was named, that's where the name Scotland comes from, named after the Egyptian queen, or princess rather, who was killed there during battle. It is my theory that from the entourage of people that accompanied her back to Ireland, that there were initiated priests, builders, and the like in the group. And I think they started what's become Scottish Masonry, evolved from that entourage and their building projects as they settled in and started building their own cities and facilities during that period. So I think, I can't prove it yet, but I think so. Scottish Masonry has a different origin than the rest of English Masonry as such. You know, like English Masonry is again tied to the, from I call it the Roman Guild, stonemasons guild and what have you, that came up through continental Europe and across the English Channel. But Scottish Masonry has a different origin.
And so when you say Scottish Masonry, are you also speaking of the Scottish Rite itself?
No.
Okay, let's make that distinction.
Right, I'll make a distinction there. The Scottish Rite actually developed in France. And it was part of the political battles going on between the different families competing for kingship. And I think, I don't know if it was the Stuarts or the Jacobins or which group, but you know, it was battles going back and forth. But a unique thing that happened in Europe, again, to satisfy the church, again, the speculative men were wise enough to overlay the ancient teachings with Judeo-Christianity, so that it wouldn't be a threat to the crown. It wouldn't appear to be a threat to the crown or the church. Right. So in Scottish Rite Masonry, as originally developed, you know, I think they had 25 degrees that their warrants was issued, especially to one gentleman named Morin, who was actually a Frenchman, a French person that was, he was domiciled in the Dominican Republic and Haiti, you know, on the islands in the Caribbean during French colonialism there. And with the Haitian Revolution, a lot of the ruling class, Frenchmen, and even some of the mixed race brothers that were free during the period of the captivity of the majority of the population, that after that revolution, a lot of people fled the Caribbean. You know, like, in fact, a lot went to New Orleans, which was still a French colony. Thomas Jefferson hadn't purchased it yet. And of course, Morin and a lot of his compatriots went to Charleston, South Carolina. And that's how the Scottish Rite got to the United States.
How it got here. So you're saying, though, but you're saying that, but the Scottish Masonry that you're speaking about as it relates to Skoda and her crew, you know, again, haven't been proven yet, but that thread, that type of masonry you're saying is not what is now referred to as Scottish Rite. I just want to make sure we set that straight, just in case anybody listening thinks that. I just want to make it, they know y'all didn't hear Brother Tahuti say that. I just wanted to make sure for the record, good brother. But
two are not related.
Right now, let me drill down a bit, brother, because you said a lot. And you know, and again, y'all sit back. I hope y'all got y'all pens and paper out, because y'all should be taking notes, you know, because this is I don't know how unique or rare this opportunity is, good brother, but I know that it's a damn good opportunity, you know, to learn something. And, you know, I'm here learning, just like everybody here should be in a learning mode. So I want to drill down a bit, because oftentimes when we talk about, you know, whenever I see somebody trying to dismiss the claim that there's an African influence on modern Freemasonry, you know, because it's often done with a certain tone, as if it's incredible, like there's no credibility to it whatsoever. People, you know, they get into those modes where they start trolling you and start just trying to, you know, laugh out loud and, oh my God, here they go with that stuff again. And what I find is that when people say that there is no evidence, like you were saying, you look for the word Freemasonry, in the Medu Neter. I've heard people say that there was no system of yoga in ancient Kemet, and because they looking for the word yoga. Like, you're not gonna find it as the word yoga, but do you see the practice itself? And what you have done is that you've pointed out and acknowledged, like many, it's undeniable that the practice of building in stone is present. And the first temples are there. They still stand. I mean, somebody please show me Solomon's temple. You know what I mean? Somebody show me that. Just show me just one stone from it at least. But anyway, so we still got those temples standing, brother. One thing that often rubs me wrong in those types of conversations is how people lack the understanding of what the Egyptian foundation, as you called it, of modern Freemasonry, how that impacted the people. A lot of people like to just make it intellectual. Can you elucidate a little bit for us, or just talk about it within your purview? What was this process for people? We talk about making good men better. What was this process in ancient times? Was it intellectual? Was it truly spiritually transformative? What's your understanding of that?
Okay. Well, it was all of the above. Again, the ancient Nile Valley culture was a complicated and sophisticated culture and civilization. As an example, the oldest group of initiated men that I found in the Nile Valley culture actually were the Shimshu Haru,
Yes,
the blacksmiths. All right, as such. And in fact, I was in a deep discussion with both Dr. Ben and John Henry Clark at this exact same time over this concept, that the ability to of the blacksmiths to be able to melt stone, because that's what they considered the iron ore, that was stone, and to melt it and shape it and use it in their tools and weapons was of such importance to the civilization that those things, the knowledge of how to do that was secret and was only passed on, like to men who had been initiated into and taught that particular craft, as such. Later, the priest class themselves that practiced the spirituality aspect of the society, they too divided up into initiated groupings. Again, so you learn, like in steps, the knowledge of the spiritual system of the Nile Valley. The priest class that were just engaged in, I hate to use the word, but I'll call it religious activities. The other building crafts, to become a carpenter, to become a stonemason, to become any one of those crafts, they developed systems of teaching that were hierarchical. You learned in steps. So like an apprentice, like a craftsman, and what have you. So across the Nile Valley culture, all right, this process of teaching by way of allegory, using metaphors to teach specific knowledge, especially what we teach in our middle chamber, mathematics, the geometry, as Dr. Jacob Carruthers out of Chicago stated, the Medu Nefer and Medu Neter was very important in Nile Valley life. Correct speech, not just speaking, but correct speech, but you kind of learn in grammar. So all of these things were taught in the different systems. It's not like it was just one quote unquote mystery system, I guess such, but it was divided. The ancient systems were divided into sectors.
Almost like the current lodge. You've got these different rites. You got these different houses within the various rites. There
you go. We whether if you go up the York Rite ladder, there's one thing. If you go up the Scottish Rite ladder, it's another. And as I found out while attending Masonic Week, which is held here in Washington, D.C. again, there are many more houses on the other side than we currently have in Prince Hall Freemasonry. As such. I mean, again, our distinguished brother Roundtree is a member of the, I think the Blue Friars,
right?
Which is the writing house of white Freemasonry and such, like, and he was inducted into, like that order.
Right.
Of white Freemasonry. So I don't know all of the houses in white Freemasonry. And
right. But that ain't even
right.
That ain't even, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they have things they have things that we don't have.
But we got things they don't have.
We have things that they don't have.
African ancestry.
Hey. And hopefully as we develop in the future, again, as I was saying, for the younger brothers that are more in touch with their African identity, I see a return, in a way of speaking, to African Lodge number 1.
Right. And so I'm gonna walk us into that conversation about African Lodge and the change in the Prince Hall, because I know you got knowledge on that as well. But I think it's important to have an emphasis here, again, because I think people mistake initiation. You know, we can only reference our modern experience of initiation, you know, our modern experience of so-called transformative processes. Right. And we think that, and I'm speaking very generally, we typically think that it's just something to do. It's memorizing certain things, you memorize performance, if you will. And you get up, like very few people upon being raised actually felt transformed. You know, just like very few people, you know, who get dipped into that baptismal pool, raised up feeling like they've just been baptized, right? Like, you know, and so what I understand, having gone through several true and bona fide indigenous African initiation processes, my understanding of the African side of this initiation thing is, you know, yeah, you'll learn how to, you know, like you said, how to smelt the ore, how to melt it, you know, but there was also a process on how to find it, how to locate it, you know, not only how to locate it, but how to know what it was to locate it. And then now that we found this rock, what do we do with this thing? What is this? You know, so something was guiding those initial initiates to find this product and to learn how to manipulate it and then utilize it. And so what I'm understanding, again, is through my African initiation processes, is that it is a true awakening, and it's far from an intellectual process. Although we do communicate, there are instructions, there is information being shared and imparted, but the actual process itself, you know, is probably the complementary energy of intellect, because a lot of times you can't make intellectual sense out of it, right? I experienced some things in the bush in Ghana, you know, to where, you know, I'm telling the brothers over there, somebody like Maladoma Somé, this Book of Water and the Spirit, you know, these are like the African Harry Potter stories, right? And this is the stuff that we actually, my push is for us to get back to that, you know, to where, man, Brother Tootie, if I could wave my, I don't know the name of it, but you know that with the high priest shoes with the little fur on the tail or whatever. If I had one of them joints, man, and I could wave my magic, you know, juju stick, I would make it so that every brother that is a descendant of the African Lodge, because that's how I love to refer to us, would also be initiated into some African spiritual tradition. And I mean, like a real initiation, so that when the brothers are raised up and they're raised up, they are seeing things differently. They understand that there's so much behind this veil, because what we don't know is that our European brothers who put all of this energy into our symbolism, you know, whether now the one that you run up on in the streets probably don't know, but there, I'm sure, are plenty that do know that these symbols have power, and that they bathe and they immerse their symbol and their system and their version of the craft in our symbolism because of the power of it. And so, talking about that power, originally our craft, being Prince Hall, being PHA, was called African Lodge, right? And there's some debate, you know, I've heard people say it's just what we called ourselves back then. It's just what it was. You know, ain't nothing in this happenstance. The brothers who were the founders and formers of African Lodge #1, they were closer to being from Africa than most of us are right now. there was still some cultural orientation. There was, I would suspect, and still some type of cultural relationship. And so, Brother Tahuti, tell us the history of how it went from African Lodge to becoming Prince Hall, and what your perspective is on that. We've had this conversation, but please share it with our audience.
Okay, well, the from African Lodge, of course, it was changed to African Lodge was changed to African Lodge 459 when the charter was issued from England. All right, Prince Hall applied when he applied for the charter in his letter to Brother Moody over there. There was African Lodge. Mm-hmm. Of course, when it was entered on the roll book of the Grand Lodge of England, it was numbered 459 or 430 originally, then 459. Mm. So that's, but it's still African Lodge, which is a higher number. But when Prince Hall died, the brothers of the day, in their mindset, they were honoring Prince Hall, their first worshipful master, quote, grandmaster, but worshipful master, by then naming the lodge after him. Mm. That's how that started. Officially in 1827, after John T. Hilton became Grand Master, and wrote the letter of independence, established, Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Massachusetts as such. So, and since that time, it's maintained the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Massachusetts. In, I think it was 1944, right? At the Conference of Grand Masters, a resolution was passed, whereas all of the Prince Hall, all of the Black Grand Lodges under the independent Black Grand Lodges adopted the name Prince Hall Grand Lodge, with the exception of I think Florida and Mississippi. Okay. Mississippi is still, I think, Stringer Grand Lodge. And Florida, I think it's Union Grand Lodge still. Forgive me, brothers, especially Brother Urso, if you are, forgive me. But anyway, there were reasons, but for the most part, the whole fraternity adopted the name Prince Hall Grand Lodges as such. So what do you think the impact of that was? Well, I think the impact was a loss of identity. There was something very powerful in the name African Lodge to start with. It gave us guidance. Again, if you read the sermon of Morant sermon. Okay, yeah. To the lodge up there in Massachusetts. If you read, I think it's the 1797 charges that Prince Hall charged to the lodge. Mm-hmm. Again, keeping our eyes on the prize, who we were, him being able to go back in history and relate the brothers on the African continent in terms of what they were doing in the charge to the brothers. In Morant's sermon, again, talking about the brothers, the African brothers in Egypt that became part of the Roman Legion. Like that eventually, that whole story that, they end up being killed because they wouldn't kill Christians on behalf of the Roman general or whatever at that time. But knowing who we are, a sense of identity, we as Black people, as African people from our captivity have gone through a lot in terms of identity. A lot of people don't know there was a conference in, I think, 1834, 1835, called the during the National Negro Convention movement, and at that 1835 conference, in making a deal with the American Colonization Society, the delegates actually voted that from henceforth we'll stop calling ourselves Africans. We'll strike the name of Africa from all of our institutions, and from henceforth we'll be known as people of color. Right. And by 1837, instead of being known as people of color, that was the proper name, but the grassroots name for people of color became colored people. Right, colored people. That's why I always push back against that people of color piece, man.
But so, and that's I remember those stories. I remember one time, well, I don't know where we were coming from or where we were going. We were walking down U Street though when you dropped that gem on me. Now with that, having changed the name from Prince Hall to African Lodge. Matter of fact, the AME Church, and it was only one other group you told me about that resisted that.
Yeah. Richard Allen was adamant on keeping the name African. In fact, he had heard Morit's sermon. Like he being in the African Methodist, Episcopal Church, he had heard the sermon, and it made sense. They maintained their identity as African, and forgive me, at the moment, but there weren't many that did that. Most of the, as we're struggling with free blacks, I'll say. We're struggling with the abolitionist movement. We're struggling with the Underground Railroad. We're struggling trying to influence the politicians to end the whole system of slavery as such. So the social conditions that we were actually living during that time, the people kind of went with what they call the leadership. Right. And there's a unique thing in the leadership that we often don't talk about that I think is very important. There was a considerable number of mixed race men who were freed by their fathers and given a grub stake and told to leave the area, go someplace else and live. As such, like a lot of these men looked very much like their fathers. They were, light complexioned, but because of the one drop rule, because some of them still had the broad nose or the puffy lips. Some of them had straight hair. Some of them had African hair. As such. But anyway, these mixed race brothers, especially in terms of the American Colonization Society, wanting to ship all free blacks out of America, very clearly having free black people in the country gave hope to those still in captivity that freedom was possible. Right.
Is that the group that met with Abraham Lincoln? Does that lead up to that?
Well, the meeting with Abraham Lincoln didn't take place until 1862. But this is in the 1830s. The colony of Liberia had been established in 1821. So a lot of free blacks had been shipped out already.
Right, because a lot of people don't know that Liberia was the only U.S. colony on the continent of Africa.
That's correct. Established by the American Colonization Society, of which, what's the brother who wrote the Star Spangled Banner song? The national anthem, Francis Scott Key. Francis Scott Key was a major agent of the American Colonization Society. All right. And again, they were pushing, their idea, having free blacks in the country, gave hope to blacks on the plantations that there was a status as freedom that they could look forward to.
Right. It let them know that they weren't de facto slaves. It ain't nothing natural about that.
There you go. There you go. So, I mean, that's some of the background. So, like in terms of an opinion, I think it was like today, looking backwards, I think it was a mistake to have changed the name. But again, looking back at the times and the social conditions those brothers had to address themselves in.
You can understand it.
I can understand the strategy. Because again, as a strategy, by changing the name, now you don't appear to be a threat. Right. Even though you free blacks, we're allowing you to have secret meetings without us being there, as such, right? But we're not perceived as a threat. That's why by the time Lewis Hayden is Grand Master in Massachusetts, at the height of what was the Massachusetts Vigilance Committee, and it is said, and I think Brother Roundtree would correct me if I'm wrong, but it is said that there were vigilante black men who were cornering white slave catchers who came up into Boston trying to kidnap people to take them back south. Several of them disappeared, several brothers, though they were already in the hands of these slave catchers on their way back south, got rescued, like by a band of men, and the slave catchers kind of either fled or disappeared.
Good.
We didn't keep this in the minutes. In fact, I think I was having a conversation. It might have been with Brother Morgan, but it was one of the local brothers that from 1760 until 1770. Let's look at that period of time when the seeds of the American Revolution were being planted. In Boston, Massachusetts, there was a group of men, and a lot of history books will tell you that it was a group called the Sons of Liberty doing all this. Well, the Sons of Liberty met in the Goose and Gridiron Tavern that was the meeting place of, I think it was St. Andrew's Lodge, the exact same place as such, that it was the Sons of Liberty meeting in the Masonic Lodge room that changed clothes and put on makeup and went down to the Boston Harbor and threw the tea overboard.
Started dumping tea, right?
There you go. So from the brothers watching the activities of the White Masons, you could see the strategy that they would do some things under another name.
Right.
Because it couldn't be known that a Masonic Lodge is engaged in rebellion against the king.
Right.
So officially, the Masonic Lodge wasn't in rebellion against the king, because one of the landmarks of the craft is that we have to be good brothers and, like in concordance with the government that we live
rules
under.
Of the land, the rules of the land.
There you go. So these brothers were slick enough to create an outside group or a name that they could perform all of their revolutionary acts under.
Got you. Let's shift gears, man. Later for them folks. Look, Brother Roundtree had a list of questions for us in this magazine, in this particular issue, one of which was, does Freemasonry benefit from the study and understanding of Egyptian mysticism?
Absolutely. I mean, like your answer. I mean, just, like to make it real short, yes.
Right.
Today, what I tried to point out, if you Google Hermetic Masonry, on a couple of the sites of the brothers, they go into detail about what Hermetic Masonry is. Again, Hermetic Masonry are the subjects that was that all come from what they call Hermes Trismegistus, studying the doctrine of Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus is a created name that the Greeks created and put upon the brother that was known in ancient Egypt as Brother Tahuti. As such, he was Tahuti. All right. In fact, at his at the temple in Kemenu, if again, you can go online and find this. Netambo II, the pharaoh, he built had raised two black obelisks, two black tekenu at Kemenu at the entrance of the temple to Thoth, the temple to Tahuti, as such, right? And on it, if you can read, it says Tahuti, ow, ow, ow. If you like, A-O, A-O, A-O is the inscription, which means great, great, great. So this is Tahuti 3 times great, written on a black tekenu, or two of them.
Two of them.
There you go, the Joaquin and Boaz. The
two pillars, huh?
There's the 2 pillars on either side of the entrance to this temple, as such, right?
Right.
And as with other things, when the and the Roman writer Josephus probably coined the best phrase to explain it. The Greeks were the first to bastardize all of the old names. Like Kemet, the Greeks changed to Egyptios. It starts there. Everything, they changed the names of they changed all the Egyptian names into a Greek form.
Mhm.
And so this
Well, I mean,
Greek,
which makes sense though. I mean, because it's their language.
it's their language. It's
It
their
makes
language,
sense.
right? It's their language. They're sitting on the throne. Ptolemy had sent back to Greece for a bunch of clerks and things to translate documents from the Medu Neter into Greek so they could read it.
Right.
Thus we come up with a guy like Euclid.
Right.
All right. Not really known as a math. There's no history of Euclid being a mathematician in Greece.
Right. But Euclid's problem is, it's like,
Again, hey, Euclid's problem again. If you translate the Amos papyrus, it's called. I think now it's called, or the Rhine papyrus.
The Rhine joint, yeah.
Yeah, you go. That's in I think the museum in Moscow, and there's one called the Berlin papyrus. These are two mathematical papyri. All right.
Right.
If you are, your job is to translate this Medu Neter, this Egyptian writing, into Greek so that the Greeks could read it.
Yeah.
All right.
So they can learn.
They can learn. There you go. All of the mathematical problems that Euclid writes about are written in hieroglyphics or hieratic.
So he plagiarized.
Well, not really. Well, he didn't.
Right.
Later people attributed to him ownership,
right,
of documents that he never claimed to have created. He didn't create the substance of the documents. He just translated. He was a clerk.
He didn't, and he never claimed to. He never claimed to. Other people gave him that. And see, that's why it's so important. Like when we're looking at ancient history, that we look at the earlier, we look at the Greek writers themselves, because they often do pay tribute and homage to their teachers and their source. Yes. And I think that's why there's such a scramble these days to rewrite history and to parcel history off to where you only get more of the modern versions of most disciplines. Right, because with the modern versions, you're dealing with, typically the standard, racist author that's trying to whitewash everything and bleach the black out of everything. Well, and so, no, go ahead, brother.
Again, for the while England and France and other European countries are engaged in the African slave trade because they have declared that the African was intellectually inferior to them, with jungle bunnies, all of those kind of things, right? How can you, on the one hand, justify Africans being the ownership of all this knowledge? See, so they're the ones who then transfer the ownership of the knowledge from Africans to Europeans.
Right. They were on a very
there's a big debate even in the craft about stolen legacy, George James's book. Right. I've talked to a couple of brothers, who want to throw the book out the window, saying, he didn't prove his point. He didn't prove his point. But yet, I mean, if you go back and if you read Manly Palmer Hall, The Freemasonry of the Ancient Egyptians, he talks about Plato's initiation. He talks about Thales, studies in Egypt. So if you take a class in Greek philosophy starts with Thales. It starts with anaximander. There are several people before you get to Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle.
Right.
I always ask the question, what did the state of Athens charge Socrates with?
He was put to death. He was put to death for it.
He was put to death for teaching a foreign doctrine to the youth of Athens.
That's right.
That's the exact wording, a foreign doctrine to the youth of Athens. So Socrates was not teaching Greek philosophy
to
the students of Athens. They called it a foreign doctrine.
Right. And so what benefit does the craft have from studying Egyptian mysticism from your perspective?
Well, going back to what you said about the initial initiation, if you understand the nature of the Egyptian system, it will transform you. You just won't go through be an actor in a play and get through it and say, okay, I've been transformed.
Right. They put some light on.
There you go. When you learn, rhetoric and grammar, when you learn how to speak correctly, when you learn, that the dialectic and the substance of words and ideas, when you see that when you know those things, that
Mhm.
transformed you.
Because I'm glad you brought that back up, because earlier you said medu nefer,
Yeah, that's
and medu neter, right?
mhm.
It's a clear distinction, right?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah,
I'm glad you caught it. One is beautiful speech,
that's right.
and the other is divine speech.
That's right. Yep.
That's it. See, like the divine, yeah, in terms of understanding what those terms were.
Right.
Look, again, it's like, look, we talk about one of the things when we transform men. In fact, I think it's in the first degree when we tell them that after you in the lecture on symbolism,
Mm-hmm.
after coming in here with us, you're going to become a thinking being. You're getting away
Right.
from all that believing stuff.
That's right.
You know, when you were a kid, you believed in Santa Claus, and you thought that was very important as a belief. You know, you might have believed in an Easter bunny. You might believe in the great pumpkin, because adults tend to flabbergast their children with a bunch of fairy tales when they could be using that same time to teach them actual knowledge.
Right.
You know, so they have to unlearn and the child learns, if they believe this, go along with their parents, they'll get a reward for it.
Right.
So by having strong beliefs, they get rewards, you know, candy, gifts, Easter eggs, you know, whatever. So
you remember that article when I slow walked this into that $2 bill discussion? I talked about those 3 levels of, like, you know, we could do this, you could do
you know, well, a belief system is a good place to start.
It works for what it works for.
Tell the brothers
right
in the first degree that they're coming into a process where they are going to be transformed. They are going to become thinkers, and they're going to become knowers of not to know.
Knowers. Yep.
So, like, to know is a higher state of being than to believe.
Right.
The belief levels, that's a child's level of life.
Right.
You know, like believing in this, believing in that. But for a man, you know, like to navigate through life in this world, you need to be knowers. You need to know stuff, not just keep believing silly things. So so going back to the mysticism, the Egyptian mysteries, again, it's all about teaching science, mathematics, again, language, be like astronomy.
Right. And see, but again, so we got to go deeper than that, though, because, you know, the word science is the root of that is skill, which is to know. You know, so science itself is the process of knowing. Yeah. But even as how we in modern times understand science, you know, we're thinking of the scientific method, which is a very concrete, a very linear process that does not really get to the core of knowing. And it definitely ain't the only process for knowing, right? I mean, we got some sisters that are dream about, somebody got a big mama right now that dream about fish tonight. And she's gonna wake up tomorrow morning and she's gonna call somebody somewhere and say that girl pregnant, because she know by the interpretation of these symbols that come from the non-intellectual route, right? And I think it's very important, because like you were saying earlier, like the beautiful speech, you know, with rhetoric and grammar, you know, and when we talked about speech in ancient Kemet, you know, speech was the way that you move things, you know, it was a vibratory sound, you know, they come out your mouth, you know, and it was in the Bible, they talk about, you know, you chanting. I used to be a Rasta. We talk about lightning, job, brimstone, and fire. You know, when you say those things, lightning is supposed to flash in the sky, right? They have what we call the mantra right now. If you look at like in Ra Nefra Men's Medu Netter, he talks about in the sphere of Sekert, you know, which is Binah in the Kabbalah, that third sphere. We start talking about that spiritual power and these matrices that you can manipulate with your beautiful speech, you know, with your divine speech, with those divine utterances. And so it wasn't just like, you know, you had the most prolific speaking skills, you know, and it wasn't that, you know, you were just loquacious with your vocabulary, but you knew the words of power. You know, you knew how to connect these various vibratory units to manifest in reality and to manipulate already manifested reality. And when you're talking, you know, we talk about mathematics, you know, I think it was it Einstein maybe said it was the language of the universe. You know, and we talk about mathematics. We ain't talking about just crunching numbers. You know, I mean, because I mean that temple that's in your background right now, what that replicates is a divine layout. And I know you deal with that as well, the temple in man, and how the temple was designed to reflect the human body. And it wasn't just an artistic expression, right?
No, not at all. I mean, I agree. But again, in those steps of knowledge, see, again, moving, see that there's a process
Right.
of getting to that point of intuitive,
right,
of mastering the intuitive mind.
Right.
You know, like, I don't know if you can skip from just believing stuff, go straight to the intuitive process.
No, it don't happen. Now, but see,
I
what's
mean,
the beauty?
that's like the third degree.
But
First,
see, but it's a beautiful.
we teach the middle chamber in the second degree.
Right.
All
But
right,
it's a beautiful thing though, because the intuition is there.
Yeah.
With their believing mind. But it's not mastered. It may not be a conscious tool. But the other thing about that is, if the receiver of that insight is still just a believer, and I'm not minimizing belief, belief is powerful. You know, somebody can have, matter of fact, that's the whole science of placebo. You know, when a person believes that they've taken a curative medicine, if they believe it strong enough, their body will cure. It will heal as if they actually took the curative substance. And so belief is not necessarily something to be thrown away. It's just something to be put in its proper place. And I think that our real problem is that when belief is all that we have, you know, when it's all that we have, and then when we're locked into a system or a culture that's designed to manipulate you based on your beliefs and to give you these erroneous beliefs that never manifest into anything empowering for you or your people, right? And so when we look at when we look at these things, when we look at the mathematics, when we look at the rhetoric, when we look at music, you know what I mean? When we look at all those 7 liberal arts, good brother, and we only look at them from the current level, as you're saying, the belief level, not the thinking and not the knowing. Then what happens is that we can only deal with like those flashes of insight that come through intuition. We can only deal with that as a believer, meaning that we can't take that and put our full trust and knowledge in it. And then, because when the way that intuition works for a believer is different than the way it works for a knower, but it does work and it's always there. And so we're just constantly, the whole notion of education is not what we do today, which is just pour a bunch of information in and facts in. You know, education literally comes from the Latin word to bring out. And so it's a whole process of doing nothing more than awakening what's actually already in us. And so, and that ties back into that conversation about the African Lodge piece, right? That identity that you spoke about. If we're missing our identity as African descendants or descendants of the African Lodge, then we're also missing that understanding of what we are as human beings in the first place. Because this Western man would tell you that we are limited to this physical vehicle. They'll try to tell you that your consciousness and your mind is in your brain, and it's not. It is not. That's like the switchboard, right? It's like the switchboard that your spirit and your mind engages the body and the physical world through. But they have us very much limited in our understanding. They've cut off that identity that you spoke about, which then limits our ability to even comprehend some of this stuff on those higher or deeper levels, depending on how we're talking about it, right? And I think that that's a major disservice that's been done to us. And I think that as Freemasons, that is our major task. Those of us that are around right now, that it is our major task to reawaken and to reclaim, what I say, reclaim our stolen legacy, right? It's for us to do that, but I can't reiterate it. It ain't, and that's why I can't wait, man. You know, I've gotten the green light to do the African rite. And I'm working diligently on that. You know, I'm writing those degrees, and, you know, I put it forth in front of the ones that gave me permission to go ahead and do it, man. But when brothers go through the African rite, Brother Tahuti, you know, it's not going to be that intellectual piece. Brothers are going to wake up and they're going to see this thing a little bit differently. Because one thing I'm good at is showing you better than I could ever tell you, man.
Hey, look, I wish you the best and want you to have it completed so I can take it, you know, before I get too feeble.
Hey, brother, and that,
you
lit a fire under me. I got you, brother.
Hey, you know, like, hey, formally, but again, our growth as a craft, you know, like during the period of what the Antebellum America, from the Revolutionary America up to the victory over the British, like that's the revolutionary period, then the formation of the country. Then there's antebellum America, from the formation of the country up to the Civil War. During that period, we as Masons had a different task. There were higher priorities that we had to attend to and be Masons. So we used the craft differently than during that time than we would use it today. It was paramount of getting, not only were, like the free men, Masons, but they were engaged in activities to get more people free. We're participating in, and like I said, conducting the Underground Railroad. They were actually guiding men. I tell people about, we know about David Walker, a member of African Lodge 459 of Boston, but a lot of people don't know that he was assigned to accompany Abdul Rahim once he got to Washington, to Philadelphia, to New York, and to Boston. Now, a lot of people don't, Abdul Rahim was a prince when he was captured in Africa and ended up on a plantation down in Louisiana. And it just so happened that a French traveler who had known him in his home country and knew his father was traveling through the United States and ended up running into him on a plantation in Louisiana. Wow. And he's the one that wrote back to his father in Morocco, all right, and the Sultan of Morocco writing to the President of the United States, freeing his brother. So this brother got freed because somebody in Washington paid the slave owner, the master of that plantation, to free this man. Anyway, when he got to his travels to the north and the speeches he gave, David Walker was his guide through all of that. When he left the States, then David Walker wrote his piece. Now, nowhere in David Walker's writings does he say what he learned from Abdul Rahim or what inspired him, but the kind of man that David Walker was before he met Abdul Rahim changed, and he became the outright militant abolitionist and writer after his trek with Abdul Rahim. So he just didn't come up out of the blue and become a militant writer. Right. He had an experience with an African brother, that helped inform him, and I think gave him additional energy. So we all know about David Walker's appeal. Right. But but there's a background story to it that we seldom go into the depths of it. And again, it's that African connection. Abdul Rahim still knew who he was.
That's right, right. And you know what? What I would dare to say is that experience was probably initiatory in nature, because what you're saying is like there was a transformation in David Walker.
It was,
and it's kind of like how some people understood that scene in Amistad when CK and them was on the deck and they were like digging the nails out of the wood with their bare fingers, and how they were dancing and they were kind of chanting, and what they were doing, from my understanding of African ritual, is that they were conjuring up the energy. They were conjuring up that warrior spirit because they knew that they were about to go to war with these folks. And they understood that by singing this particular song with these particular Medu Nefer, this particular beautiful speech and these chants, and with this particular movement, with this particular rate of breathing, it's going to rise that fire, that warrior fire that we need right now, i.e. Shango, i.e. Ogun, i.e. Heru Kahudi, i.e. Heru, like the Shinsu Heru, they were blacksmiths, just like Ogun is the blacksmith on the West Coast, right? It was this, and that blacksmith energy, blacksmithing is not an easy job. It's very dangerous. You're dealing with very high temperatures, and you're creating weapons and technology with this stuff. And so I would suspect that David Walker's experience with Abdul Rahim, that was his name, right, brother?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, with Abdul Rahim was one that was initiating him and helped him to awaken and get in touch with that fire spirit that he would need to do the battle that he ended up waging. Because didn't David Walker have like a medical degree or something?
I don't think he had a medical degree.
It wasn't him.
Yeah,
Who was it?
That
I'm
wasn't
mixing him
Walker.
up with somebody else, and I apologize for that. I'm mixing him up. One of our other scholars from that era, I believe, was like the first Harvard. He had a degree. Was he from Harvard?
No, Walker. No, Walker was.
Martin Delaney.
Yeah. Oh, you talking about Delaney? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
must be thinking Martin Delaney. My bad.
Okay. Yeah. No, it
Yeah.
wasn't Walker. Yeah. He came up. He was born free in, I think, North Carolina,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
couldn't stand the condition he was living in, so he migrated north.
He went up north.
Ended up in Boston. Yes.
Right. But I think it was initiatory, and I think that the brother taught him how to awaken that that fire spirit in him. And it's crazy though, because I've been in rituals where, like for example, my very first ritual with the Osiris Society in DC. You know, shout out to Orwa Hey, Meru and Common in the family. One of my very first rituals there was the sister answered the door, and she was very polite. She was very sweet. Sheikh Am Sa Masut, matter of fact. Sheikh Tepraim Sa'a's wife. And, you know, she answered, greeted me at the door. And then that was before the ritual started. And then, you know, once we got the ritual going, she, you know, we was doing a particular chant, particular drumming, particular drinks, particular foods, of all particular colors. Everything was very specific to this energy that was being called on. And this sister that was so sweet at the door, man, she got mounted and started carrying that Sebek energy, and her whole persona flipped. And that was my first ritual. I was eventually initiated into the priesthood. And, you know, so I've seen a whole lot more rituals. And when we possess that very martial energy, I've seen brothers doing things that seem to be physically impossible, right? I mean, like very much so. Like if they were not in the possessed state, in the state of conjuring this particular energy, this fire energy, they would not be able to do the things that they were doing. And I think that that's one of the things that we are missing now is our ability to tap in. One of the things I'm working on right now, as far as the African psychology side of things, is the African psychology. I'm looking at these different Netaru and Orisha as personalities types. You know, these are actually our personality types. And the way that the Western world is telling us to deal with personality is to look at it as if it's very much concrete and it's a consistent mode of operating, a very consistent identity. And if you can move in and out of multiple ones, then you might have a personality disorder. And my understanding is that, yeah, you might be born with a very specific personality disposition, but through these proper techniques and training, you can call on any one of these other personalities that might be a better fit for your current situation and current circumstance. And that's what our ancestors were all about. Identifying, like my zodiac sign is a Capricorn. And so people think, oh, I can't stand Capricorn. Capricorn is like boom, 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 boom. But this Capricorn understands that I might need to master being a Leo, might need to master being a Cancer, a Sagittarius, and Aries, because different situations might be a better fit for a Gemini than it is for a Capricorn. You see what I'm saying? Yes. And to me, that's the power in our African spiritual traditions, is that it opens up an entire worldview and perspective that this limited stuff that we're currently operating out of, you know, has prevented us from otherwise tapping into. And you mentioned something earlier, and I'll take a breath. You mentioned something earlier too, brother, about our white brothers practicing the craft differently. And when I say they practice the craft differently, I'm looking at the condition of their grand lodges, the condition of their general lodges. And of course, they've had a head start on us, you know, because they had access to wealth and resources that we necessarily didn't have access to for a longer period of time, if ever we've had access to it. But the other part about it that I see is that they also understand how to employ the craft differently than what we've been taught. And so I'm looking at it from a more psycho-spiritual level. They understand that our symbols aren't just dead symbols to be memorized and regurgitated, but these are living symbols that you can actually employ on your own behalf. And I had that idea. And then when I got initiated in the Ifa as a priest of Olokun, the Babalawu that initiated me is also a Mason. And he told me some things about how our brothers in Haiti, some of the brothers in Trinidad would use some of the Masonic symbols, but with an African spin on the use of those symbols. And when you put that African worldview and that African spin on the use of our symbols, then what happens is that it becomes a transformative process, you know. And we'll get together offline, man, and I'll talk to you about the rough ashlar ritual, you know, that he told me about. And it's just a phenomenal experience because I've done this, and it actually works. I mean, it's like it's like magic. We have access to spiritual powers, also known as magic, also known as science, but the shifting in our worldview, the forcing of us to turn our backs on, the forcing of us to turn our backs on our ancestral greatness, whether we talk in East or West Africa, has done us a great disservice, a serious disservice, man. And to me, that's that death blow that was dealt, right? That's that, you know what I mean, that joint that hit us in our head. And when it hit us in our head, if you notice how the story goes, when we shook it off, we were never restored to our pre-death blow consciousness.
True.
But instead we were raised in the consciousness of somebody else.
There you go.
Who was the king and the ruler of some other people. And so what I understand is that story is about us. We are HA, and it is up to us to reclaim that consciousness that we had prior to that death blow. What's your thoughts on that, brother?
I think that's beautifully stated. I'm just going to bring up, you know what Santeria is?
Yes, sir.
Now, in the Spanish-speaking colonies that where the Catholic Church was supreme, the brothers and sisters appeared to be practicing Catholicism.
Yes, sir.
But they used the Catholic cover to continue to practice the African spirituality.
Yes, sir.
As such, right? So I'm not surprised that brothers in where, again, you didn't have as much separation from their substantive African selves, you know, like as happened here in America, that they were able to today use the Masonic ritual as on the cover, on the surface, but in using an African principle underneath.
Right.
You know, as such. So yes, I mean, we have that's part of the craftiness of what I call part of our African nectar, our nature.
Right, nectar, right?
we're able, that's a substantive thing of how we're able to do a thing of that nature. And in fact, even using the word nature, you evolved from the original ancient Egyptian term, the NTR. That flag, you know, however you're going to deal with it, you know, like, but the nature of a thing. And we can take a tool and use it for ourselves as opposed to use it the way the instructor told us it's supposed to be used. You know, you can use a hammer only to put nails in wood, you know, as a carpenter, you know, like it. But if you really know what you're doing, that hammer can be a weapon. That hammer could be several other things. You can do more than wood, you know, put nails in wood with a hammer. So as a tool, the craft is a tool. And again, as a tool, the respectability that African Black Masons had in this country during the Antebellum period, result of the power of white Freemasonry in America. As such, you know, like during the so-called Morgan anti-Masonic period, because of the Morgan affair, white Masonry took a low key. You know, like, but during the time white Masonry is at a low key and not a, you know, outward in a public key, African or Black Masonry is still developing. One for like here in Washington, D.C., Social Lodge was created in June of 1825. Our second lodge was created in 1846, our third lodge in 1846, you know, like, forgive me, Universal Lodge of Alexandria, and then Felix Lodge, you know, all during this time period when white Freemasonry is on the low, on the down low, you know, like, but we were still growing, but not outward publicly doing things. In fact, one of the institutions that we created very similar to the Sons of Liberty here in the District of Columbia, we had an organization that the brothers created called the Civil, Statistical, and Literary Association. That was created by the brothers in the lodges, you know, like to do their public advocacy for all kind of things. But they didn't want to do it as social lives. They didn't want to do it as universal lives. So we had a cover organization that we could accomplish, you know, like, hey, again, we had Underground Railroad stations here in the District of Columbia. We had Underground Railroad station across the river in Alexandria. You know, like they were sending the merchant, the brothers associated with the shipping industry were able to sneak brothers and sisters on the ships, going down the Potomac River and into the Chesapeake Bay and discharged in Delaware. And some made it all the way up into Pennsylvania before they were discharged.
Wow.
That was one group. Social Lodge was running brothers up through what is today called Rock Creek Park, near Rock Creek.
In the park.
There you go. It takes them all the way out west, you know, like out west through Maryland and, you know, like, and into Pennsylvania as such. So, you know, they were doing it under the auspices of a civilian name, not a Masonic name. So that's part of the strategy of using the tool, but using the tool to accomplish what needed to be done during that time. The great thing that we talk about a lot is the amount of monies that was raised to support Thurgood Marshall in the 1954 civil rights case. In fact, we have copies of the letters he wrote. He couldn't have done it without us. We funded that effort. So during different times in our history, our focus has been on accomplishing what we needed to accomplish on the Freedom Trail, as opposed to the as Freemasons being involved in study esoteric masonry, as you know, doing the ritual, being in due form, administratively continuing to exist was the main focus. We're in an era today where the enlightenment that masonry promises, you know, like we're able to turn to that. We've accomplished these other things. I look at younger brothers like yourself and Brother Connor here. There are brothers across the fraternity that I'm so proud to have gotten a chance to know, that I see coming along on this trail, that in the future, that there will be different offerings in the craft. Like you say, this African ritual that you're working on now, the idea of using this this Zoom tool to have lectures and discussions, the face of what we're doing and how we're doing it is changing as we speak.
And rapidly so. Yeah. And real quick, let me give a plug real quick. For the brothers that are here in attendance, if you are not familiar with the Phylaxis Society, and this is our quarterly publication, the Phylaxis, you know, and, you know, it comes out quarterly. If you would like to get in on them, and these are jam-packed with scholarship. I mean, Brother Tahuti is all up and through these things. Myself, I write, Brother Connor here, Brother Roundtree, of course, is the editor. Brother Morgan's constantly writing, Brother Honeywell. We've got a team of scholars that are constantly publishing, you know, in the Phylaxis magazine. And, you know, you become a member of the Phylaxis Society, and that's how you access the magazine. And I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful organization. It's a collection of Masonic researchers, you know, and, you know, I like to consider ourselves to be like the special forces. Well, the Luxy Tenebris to me is the special forces within the Phylaxis Society. But it's just very important for, you know, you brothers who have something to say, you have thoughts. You know, I see a lot of folks on social media, you know, typing it up, but, you know, join the Phylaxis Society. Come on in, you know, and get an opportunity to publish, you know, in our quarterly magazine. Get your word out there to the people. You know, you will never be disappointed in any of these magazines. I just want to take a second just to say that, you know, look up the Phylaxis Society. You know, and if you're interested in getting more light, go ahead and join. What's up, brother?
May I just add to that, and we're also publishing classic editions of our earlier magazines.
Yes.
So not only Williams. You're right, there you go, Brother John Williams, who I think was on tonight, but he's taking the charge of what we call the collections.
That's
collections
right.
1 through 3 are out, and you can order those on Amazon. You can go straight to the Phylaxis site, I think, and order them out of our store. And so it's a lot of good information, brothers, that we've been writing. This magazine has been in existence for what, over 40 years.
Yep.
I forgot what our convention date. I think we're in our 48th year, 49th
Wow, man.
year.
And
And
it's
so
gonna be
there's
so
a lot
good.
of right. There's a lot of information that's already been published.
Right. It's gonna be so good to get back into person too with the Phylaxis convention, man. And so again, y'all brothers, go on and step up. Y'all got something to say. I see a lot of people arguing on social media. You know, put it in writing. That's one thing Brother Roundtree always says. He says, put it in writing. You got something to say, you want to challenge a point, you feel like you know something, do your research, you know, submit it to the publication committee, you know, and now mind you now, the publication committee, you know, some heavy hitters. You know, it's these heavy-hitting Masonic scholars just sitting on this publication committee. And so you got to pass the muster. So not everybody that submits an article gets published, but, you know, submit an article anyway. We give you feedback, and then you go back and you clean up, you research. We're going to ask you questions if we got any. But, you know, it'd be wonderful to get some, you know, let's get going, brothers, because we've got this organization. We've got this outlet. We've got this resource. And again, you come together with brothers from all over the world, you know, to our annual conventions. And I mean, you will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed at all. Brother Tahuti, if you don't mind, I'd like to switch up, and there are a couple of questions that I've seen in the chat. Some of the more recent questions. One in particular was, let me see, I agree that I'm experienced. I ain't gonna be able to find them now. I know one person, I'm in a group on Facebook, and every time this topic comes up, a resistance comes up. Brother Tahuti, why do you think that there's so much resistance when it comes to discussing the African presence in Freemasonry?
Oh, man. It's a difficult question to answer. You know, like when you don't know, most people who attempt to answer the question attempt to answer that question out of their belief system as opposed to what they know. I believe this, I believe this, I believe that, I heard this, I heard that.
Right.
You know, like, have you done any research?
Right.
I mean, you know, like you know, like I was talking to a brother from Indiana 2 days ago, and the brother asked me straight up, well, what is my primary source of research? I said,
he asked you that?
Yeah, oh man, you know. Well, you know,
you should say, you got time?
Yeah, well, I'm 77 years old, and I've been, you're like, I first entered Howard University in 1961.
I wasn't even born yet.
All right. So that's my introduction. In 1967, I made my first trip to Egypt.
Wow.
And when I was there, when I walked in the museum there in Cairo, the first thing that I saw going, you know, they changed the exhibits around. The first thing I saw was a bust of Amenhotep III. That's the black bust with the brother with the big dreadlocks. Yep. You can, I mean, if you just Google his name. And by the way, one of my main tools I use is, you know, been created by this new technology. You'd be surprised if just Google your question and look at the number of answers that come back, and then follow, you know, start following those. Don't be satisfied with the one. One of the questions a brother asked, I saw it pop up when we were talking about Abdul Rahim and David Walker. Google Abdul Rahim and his story, and the story, his story, plus his meeting with David Walker and David Walker accompanying him. It's on, you know, like, hey, you can do the research. It'll pop up. There's been no scholarly work written by anybody yet that
sounds like
that relationship.
Sounds like that might be your Luxie Tenebris contribution this year, Brother Tootie. let me say this real quick. So somebody asked in the chat, they were asking about why is it so difficult for white Freemasons to admit it? And my response is that it's not difficult for them to admit it. Typically, it's more difficult for us to accept that truth. Here's an example of that. It's a book by, I always get this backwards, by Dr. T.M. Stewart. And it's called Symbolism of the Gods of the Egyptians, right? Now, this is what the cover reads. And so, you know how things are kind of, you got to lift the veil sometimes. And so when you open the book up, here's what the title reads now: The Symbolism of the Gods of the Egyptians and the Light They Throw on Freemasonry. You don't get that from the outer cover. And so, you know, there's never been a problem. You know, maybe individual ones that need to maintain some type of, like you were saying earlier, deception. You know, but those that know actually know. And it's too simple to ask. I mean, you've got the house of the temple with a step pyramid on the top of it. You know, Brother Tahuti sitting in the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania in Egypt room. You know, they have no question. They're not worried about us finding out and doing something with this, because as far as some are concerned, we would never wake up to this stuff. But I beg to differ, though. We're definitely going to wake up. Somebody here mentioned a PHA trip into of Kemet would be amazing. What I would say is that if a bunch of brothers, a bunch of PHA brothers went to Kemet and went to maybe on Tony Browder's tour, or go with Brother Ashra Kwesi Kemet New, or go with Brother Yasir Raotep, go with somebody, you know, who has an established trip and who could get access to all these temples. I say that would be, you know, better than just a bunch of us getting together and going, unless a bunch of us could get together and go up under the tutelage of Brother Tahuti or something like that. But I would just say you want to go with somebody who's going to get you access to those temples and get you access to those places where you ain't going to necessarily be able to get just going as a regular tourist, you know.
I agree. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Plus, I mean, I agree with you. A lot of us don't read. Albert Churchward, G.R.S. Mead. I mean, I'm just looking at the list of the authors that Gerald Massey, Manly Palmer Hall, George Steinmetz. These are all, and even Albert Pike himself. Right. These are all white writers that acknowledge the Egyptian influence on Freemasonry. Right. They don't have any problem with it. Again, as Jeff was saying, we're the ones who have the problem with it. Like I said, I was in it, not really a debate. We were in a discussion with a brother who didn't find any validity in anything that George G.M. James wrote in Stolen Legacy. And I asked him, well, did he do any independent research on, look at James's footnotes in the book.
Right.
And go look at the authors that he quoted from and see what they actually wrote and what they said. Maybe he didn't make his point adequately enough for you, but I mean, hey, again, the what does Manly Palmer Hall say? Let me see. I have a book around here. It's called Freemasonry of the Ancient Egyptians.
Oh yeah.
But you know, like the black. I'm trying to put this up here.
Yeah, it's not showing up.
You can't see it. Okay.
Yeah, it's not showing up.
Freemasonry
there it is.
Egyptians. All right. Again, read it. Read what he says. You know, like and again, the information is there. You know, like which let us know that we should have great pride in the initiated craft. It's an African concept. It appears in other countries in other forms. I think I said in one of the lectures we gave years ago, I was quoting from the story of the what's called the Grand Temple at Luxor. It's called its Egyptian name was the Apet Asut, the most beautiful place. But the admonition given to the graduates that were from all over the world, not just the Mediterranean-based world, but as far away as India and Burma. All right, they had initiates there learning the system. The graduates were told there's only one divine truth, and you've learned that here. Your job is to go back to your cultures and teach them this truth in your language, using your symbols so that your people will understand it.
Right.
As such, right? So, I mean, there's a book called The World's 16 Crucified Saviors, as an example. If you read it, you're going to find one idea that exists in 16 different forms.
Right.
For those of us here in the United States, most of us only know of one crucified Savior.
Right.
Because that's what's taught in this society.
Right.
But to know that the world has 16 crucified saviors, it's one concept. But because different terms are used in different society, the assumption that one makes is these are 16 different things. One thing, 16 different forms.
Right.
What governs the form is the language and symbolism
And the culture of the
and
people.
culture of different peoples in different places.
Right.
The foundation of it all, again, is African culture, not what I call now Valley culture. You know, like African culture is the foundation of it. No one disputes that. Those of us, you know, like as Prince Hall Masons who dispute it, we dispute it out of not knowing, but just believing something else. And if I may just end, you know, real quickly end with this one. Some of us has accepted the definition of us created by non-African people who created a definition of the Black man based on an economic system that he was exploiting for wealth. Therefore, he created us as being non-human, almost what I call the, you know, almost back to the conscious level of a monkey. As such, so we could imitate them, but we would never be able to really understand the substance of what the craft is. In fact, one of the biggest enemies of Black Freemasonry was a white Mason from Texas who wrote, I think it was after the turn of the century, the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. But he straight out says we didn't have the intellectual capacity to really be able to understand the substance of Freemasonry. But all we could do was, you know, we could put on the play, but we'd never be able to understand it.
Right.
We can memorize and know the motions and things to make, you know, like in terms of the ritual, but we don't have the intellectual capacity to really be able to understand it. And unfortunately, some of us seem to feel the exact same way.
Right. And then some of us have actually verified that position, though, you know, because some of us only want to imitate and not pursue more light and go deeper into it. And so it's interesting, though, because, you know, part of my understanding from a psychological perspective is that we still get that knee-jerk reaction, you know, to resist anything that might point to our greatness. And, you know, and somebody put in the chat that that, you know, the reason why white Masonic brothers would be open to admitting, you know, an Egyptian origin is because they don't believe that Egypt is white. They claim ownership to that. But what I understand is that, you know, no, they know that they lying when they say Egyptians are white. You know, unless you just talk about a very, very, very ignorant person, they know they're lying. So, you know, I was taught these two distinctions on two different things. There's real crazy and there's acting crazy. There's real dumb and there's playing dumb, right? And folks will play dumb and play crazy on you in a heartbeat. And the whole time it's a strategy. It's like an art of war strategy, you know, and some people would preemptively give themselves the excuse that they're going to use later, right? And so they'll play ignorant right now. So then when you come back around and point out something that they did, they say, well, I had no idea. They could plead ignorance. And I just think it's a strategy a lot of times. Brother Tahuti, as we get ready to wrap, man, we've been on here about a good hour and a half. Just, you know, what do you think is one of the most important things that current brothers in the craft could be doing to enhance their understanding of Freemasonry and the utility of the craft as a tool? What do you think is one of the most important things that they could do?
I would say outside of the initiation process, all right, not doing while we're taking brothers through the degrees, but after the degrees work is complete, to have substantive full lectures on the lectures of Freemasonry. And we go through, you know, we prepare enough to do what is necessary during the initiation process, but we, you know, it's been my experience that we really don't go into depth and have a discussion with the brothers after they have been raised, all right, on the real substance of what they have gone through. You know, like if you can make a man a master mason in 9 months, as opposed to 3 to 5 years, you know, I mean, it used to be that kind of time put on going through the degree work.
Right.
You know, like it's almost like we've cut it to a shorter period of time as possible. And I don't, and the brothers are so happy to finally become Master Masons, they accept it and go forward. I hate to use this term, but when I was in the military back during the Vietnam War, one of the things when I was going through that jungle survival school and training that they often brought up was there are two kind of men. You know, they are bullshit soldiers and real soldiers. You know, bullshit soldiers, I won't call you on your bullshit if you don't call me on mine. You don't want to be out in a real firefight or on a real mission with a bullshit soldier.
Right.
You want somebody who really knows what they're doing, that's really got your back and your side.
Right.
In the craft, I'll put it like this. I know of, I've heard stories of grand masters that's had adulterous affairs and everybody know about it. I've heard stories of grand secretaries or grand treasurers that's stolen money from the craft, from the lodge. You know, I mean, we have brothers that have ascended to high places whose morality actually is in question yet. And we don't call brothers on stuff of that nature. You just say, hey, live and let live. If we're really going to have a transformative experience, the craft, the initiation process has to be a transformative experience.
Right.
And the brothers who really have gone through and understand, you know, like needs to push the morality of our behavior, I think that will lift the or raise the level of consciousness of other men in the craft. They'll be more inclined to want to really learn the real tenets of the craft. What are those secret gems that actually transform a man that I can be proud to know?
Right.
We have to get to that point rather than just accept the very quick process that we've gone through and been raised as Master Mason and given the title. And we really put no more work in to understanding the real philosophy and the dynamics of what in the craft makes a good man better. What transforms a man from being a guy from the outer world into an inner world where we have real special kind of knowledge, where we really are good men who perform good works.
Right. And see, we do the same type of thing even in our religious systems. So like, for example, you know, we get a bunch of cliches and sayings, right? You know, subdue your passions. You know, what do you mean? I just saw you throw back 15 cheeseburgers. What you talking about? You know, and so we in the church, you know, all up in the church, we got these cliches and things that we throw around, you know, and we always leave ourselves that loophole of being only human or even born sinners. You know, we don't understand that those things are snares that have been laid for us to minimize us so that we'd be okay with mediocrity, right? And so, you know, as you're saying, that transformative gem, those transformative jewels, you know, again, in the African initiation processes, every one that I've gone through, those are the early parts of it, you know, and that's when the African rites, the first degrees in the African rites is all about that piece right there. So it's not about teaching morality in the intellectual sense, but it's about developing the strength, that internal, you know, that internal fortitude to resist a temptation, to resist the knee jerk. You know, it's about cutting whatever it is that ties you to those things, to where you're making a clear and lucid decision. You know, you see this opportunity show up, you're not just going to knee jerk and react and jump on it. You're going to think about it. You're going to understand. You're going to see it circumspect. I can't think of what the Dogon word is for it, but you know, the Dogon with their different levels of sight, or different ways of viewing the word. And so that highest level is when you see it from all perspectives, you know, inside and all around, right? You get that holistic view of it. And that's what that type of training does for you. It elevates you to that point to where, yeah, it look good right here on the surface, but then you can see 5, 6, 7 steps ahead, like, yeah, nope, you almost got me, you know, almost got me.
Yeah, that's right. You know, some of that is revealed in, again, the initiation of Plato, as again revealed by Manly P. Hall in that book, the Freemasonry of the Egyptians. as Plato was going through this initiatory process. There's a very specific place where that very thing is brought out. You really like to really know. I mean, so if you could only see the left side of an elephant, or if you could only see the front, you could only see an elephant looking at it head on. You never could see the sides or the rear.
Right, or the tail.
So your view of what an elephant looked like is only that front view.
Right.
That's all you know. But an elephant is much more than that. The craft, like what we're practicing, is much more than the surface of the rituals and getting through the ritual process. And then the administrative process of maintaining the lodge or the Grand Lodge. See, Masonry is a lot more than that. Now maintaining the, like the administrative process of Masonry is important. It's very important.
We got to have it.
We got to have it. But Masonry is like, a bull with two horns. That's one of the horns. But the other horn, is that substantive knowledge of what is transformative in the craft, knowing that and practicing that also. Not just being to the meeting on time, not just having, not being able to open and close the lodge.
Right.
Not being able, go through each one of the chairs, each one of the stations in the lodge.
All of which is important.
All good.
Yep. Very important.
That's one of the horns.
Yep.
The other horn is that intellectual knowledge, that knowledge which transforms you from the guy you was when you were out in the outer world to this new man that the craft is going to make you into. That's important.
Right. And one thing I learned in my initiation as well is the need to develop our will and our ability to make conscious and intentional decisions, because that's what everything boils down to, is your ability to choose in the moment. And what we don't understand is that I learned this one in my Kemetic initiation about the crossroads situations, and how whenever you come up on a crossroads situation, that's an opportunity to develop more spiritual power. If you advance through the crossroads situation down the path that gives you more spiritual power. But unfortunately, at every crossroads situation, there's always this opportunity to fear some type of loss, right? And that fear of loss is what to keep people from taking those steps to embrace that spiritual power that the crossroad brings to you. And so, in the Yoruba tradition of Ifa, it's Eshu or a Legba, a Legba or a Legwa. And in the Kemetic tradition, it's Sebek or Ampu or Apawat, the Osiris Society. And those are the crossroads. And when you get there, right, you're supposed to live the truth at the crossroads is one of the sayings that we have. And so one of the things that I teach people, like because somebody asked the question earlier, what type of spiritual experiences do we have to have in order to get these levels of enlightenment? One of the things is to live the truth at the crossroads. And what this entails is every opportunity that you get to tell the truth, do it. Every opportunity that you get to live the truth, do it. And, it sounds like very simple thing, but I dare you all, I dare every last one of y'all watching right now that tomorrow, just between the hours of sun up and sundown, you do nothing but live and speak only that which is true. Try it. And what happened is that you'll get those butterflies, you get that jittery stuff in your stomach. That's how you know that the power is stirring up, and you've got a great opportunity right now to embrace that power. Most of our initiatory rites they're very practical like that, right? There are situations where you don't just, again, you literally feel the difference while you're going through the process. You literally have an experience. Like when you're done with it, you now have a new skill. You now have a new tool. You now have a new capability. And it's very, very real. I mean, it's so real. And, again, somebody asked, what can we do? If I had it my way, everybody, part of our Masonic initiation would be one of the early parts of it. Like maybe, it'd be like pre-first degree or something. You would have to, in order to qualify, you would have to have been initiated into an African spiritual tradition. You would have to, and it would have to be a bona fide house that you was initiated into. I know I'm dreaming, I know I'm reaching, but that's what I would say, man. We just have to do it.
Hey, Brother Jeff, you talked about the gatekeepers in Peru. Like impediments you go through.
Yep.
Yeah, I was talking to a brother. So Now, this is for all the brothers out there that's married. I'm going to put out a hypothetical situation. Your job sends you on an assignment to Hawaii. All expenses paid, just you. Can't take nobody. It's all company money. All right, you're there in Hawaii in one of those, one of the best hotels there, you know, on an expense account, and you're down in the bar getting you some type of orange spritzer, you know, like a little orange or whatever, a little drink without alcohol, and one of the most beautiful persons you've ever seen in your life comes up to you at the bar and wants to start a conversation toward getting it on. Nobody around, nobody who knows you, you're there. Just you in this bar, none of your buddies, nobody you know, nobody, anything. So you're there and you have this opportunity. Would you break the oath or the promise you made to God, to your wife, her family, and yours? You know, or would you do what's right? Nobody would know. I mean, that's one of, now, for example, that's one of the pitfalls on the road of life that all men face. See, have you, what in the initiation rites to become a Master Mason has equipped you with the willpower to do what's right? See, not you know, it's a hypothetical situation, and perhaps I shouldn't, you know, put it out there like that, but that's the kind of test that the teachings of the craft should arm you with being able to get back correctly.
Right. And see, and that's the whole subdue your passions piece. But it's just like in the Bible where it says, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. We don't get the instruction on how to make that the reality, right? Subdue your passions. We don't get the instruction to make that a reality. And what I often say, brother, is that, specifically talking about religion, is that we're often given the art, the artistic expression of our religious system, and even our craft as Masons, but we rarely get an exposure to the science behind the art and the science, that knowledge and that actual practical process. You know, we rarely ever get that. And again, we suffer because of that. You know, we're suffering because of that right there. Yep.
And we're also suffering because the most important thing that we have to give to Freemasonry is our word. And if we can't keep our word to the craft, how will we keep our word to any other impediment we're going to find on our journeys through the universe?
Right. If we can't keep our word to ourselves.
There you go, is our word. That it starts there.
Right. It goes back to that Medu Nefer and Medu Neter, right? The beautiful word and the divine word. And so one thing is that here's a practical exercise for people. And it's something that happens all the time. Like if you've ever declared that you're not going to do something again. Let's say if I say I'm not going to eat another candy bar in my life. I'm good. I'm off candy bars now. I'm done. You know, as soon as you make a declaration like that, if you make it, you know, from your heart, like I'm done with something, it's likely that you will give yourself an opportunity to prove yourself right. Right. And that's keeping your word to yourself. So now all of a sudden, somebody's going to show up tomorrow on your doorstep with a box of 100,000 free candy bars. And it's your favorite bar. Totally free. They fell off the Costco bus. You know, what you going to do? Right. Are you going to keep your word to you? What I often say is that our higher selves give our lower selves these opportunities to prove itself right. And so if you make a declaration, you're going to get tested. You're going to test yourself because it ain't nothing but you. You're testing you. You just come in the form of other people. You come in the form of other experiences. And through those tests, every time you're able to pass one, like what Brother Hutudi was just talking about, every time you're able to pass one, then you don't only just you don't get like a star, you don't get an A+ on the paper. You have an awakening of new mental aspects of yourself, as well as access to more power and more resources. And it's one of those things that, hearing it right now, is one thing, but when you actually start doing it, when this is demystified for you for the first time, you're like, oh, snap, this is real. And that's going to encourage you to what? Continue and keep going and keep going and continue to refine yourself until you are standing in all the glory that you could possibly be standing in. Yep. Brother Tahuti, parting words, man, let folks know how they can get in touch with you, how they can, read up on you. Of course, you're in the Phylaxis magazine. You got a couple books out there. Let the brothers know or the family know what they need to know.
Tahuti Evans, one word, @gmail.com. Tahuti Evans, no break, all small letters. Tahuti Evans, one word, @gmail.com. I will respond to emails as quickly as I can. Remember, there are a lot more than you. You know, like it's many of you and one of me, and I'm sure that I'll hear from several of you. I just want to give a shout out to Brother Craig Lightfoot down there in South Carolina. We've had conversations on the phone. I want to give a shout out to Brother Durrell Hodge down in Oklahoma. Keep moving forward, brothers. You know, like, I mean, your name's up on the screen. There are 47 of you total with us tonight. So for all the brothers, Brother President Alex Smith out there in New Mexico, definitely want to give a shout out to you. And you know, like, these are brothers that I know. I appreciate you all having participated with us tonight. And I look forward to the Lexi Tenebris continuing to bring sessions of light and education to the Prince Hall family. I want to thank you again, Brother Dr. Jeff Menzies, my man. Again, I have a lot of confidence in, let me tell about this brother. I've known this brother for over 20 years now. Time is watching, you know, like having known him as a student at Howard and seeing how he's progressed and moving through life. I'm just proud to have known him as a younger man and having seen his growth. The same with Brother James Morgan. He was a student at Howard when I first met him. And he's about to go off and work on his master's degree at Morgan State University. So yeah, I want to give a shout out to him. And to my mentor, to my sponsor, Brother Alton G. Roundtree, I definitely want to give a shout out to him. Again, he brought me into the craft. We've had a good relationship, and I think he's a very powerful and profound brother. But to
always tease Brother Roundtree. Always tease Brother Roundtree and say that we're gonna look back in history, and this is gonna be known as the Roundtree era.
Yeah, well, and what he's gonna leave, you know, like I say it jokingly, Brother Roundtree is the Sergeant Joe Friday type of historian.
Just the facts.
You read his books, and the facts are there. All the facts dealing with a subject.
You mean those big old phone books?
Yeah. Well, hey, it's enough information so that younger writers or new writers coming along will be using a lot of his works as reference books. You know, like as they write about various subjects. And understanding, writing about Prince Hall Masonry, we can write about the men themselves. We can write about the accomplishments of these men. We can write about the lodges. You know, we can write about our works. There's no limitations on what can be researched and written about. But the idea is intellectual growth on your part. And I'm just so happy and satisfied with having been asked to be a guest tonight. I have a lot of respect for Jeff Menzies. I look forward to seeing him accomplish some great things on behalf of the Phylaxis Society. And again, our leadership in Alex Smith, he supports the Lexi Tenebris. He supports what we're doing. And again, I'm honored to serve on the board of directors with him. So that's my message to the audience tonight. Thank you very much for having tuned in.
Now, Brother Tahuti, real quick, what's your Facebook handle, if you don't mind me putting? I'm gonna type it in.
I have a Facebook. I seldom use it.
Okay.
I've soured on Facebook as a personal thing. I don't do a lot of the social media thing anymore.
Okay. So we won't worry about it.
Contact me directly, you know, via email. I don't have a Twitter account. I don't have an Instagram account. I don't do all those things.
Don't worry about it. Tahuti Evans at Gmail. One word, Tahuti Evans at gmail.com.
There you go.
All right. So I want to just echo your sentiments, you know, and all the shout outs that you gave. Much love to the brothers for supporting. Again, y'all, the Phylaxis Society, if you're interested, you know, and gaining more light and sharing light, in a very structured and a very organized way. The Phylaxis Society is the way to go. Very, very strong organization, has a lot of longevity. Come on in, y'all, and start writing for the magazine. Get your words published, get your thoughts published. Iron sharpens iron around this way, though. And then, if you really about it, then you could move on into the Luxy Tenebris chapter as well, and become, a fellow of sorts. So anyway, Brother Tahuti, it's an honor. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, brother. I love you to life, man. Look forward to breaking bread with you many, many more times in the very near future. Shout out to everybody who decided to show up. And please, I posted the YouTube link. Go ahead and click that link in the chat, or just put it in there again. Click that link so that you'll have it. You can see the previous Luxy Tenebris on the level with Brother Oscar Allen that I did last month. And you can see a whole bunch of other videos. So just click that link now so that your YouTube will open up and you will have it. And then go ahead and subscribe to my channel, Mind on the Matter. And and keep, stay tuned. We got a lot more to go. We got a whole lot more to go. So once again, Brother Tahuti, thanks a lot, man. So everybody checking in, thank you all. President Smith, thanks for coming through. Brother Roundtree, Brother Morgan, everybody else. I can't see everybody's name, but thank you all. And we'll talk soon, man.
All right.
Peace.
Peace. Power.